Chief Executive says more events are coming following the success of the National Day long weekend. A new typhoon may be on its way to Hong Kong. Fatal shooting attack in the popular Siam Paragon shopping mall in Bangkok. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive John Lee hailed the Mid-Autumn and National Day holidays for having garnered popularity and brought business to the city. With the three night markets having achieved expected results, the CE said weekend bazaars will continue until early next year. Jackie Lin reports.
The long weekend holiday period spanning the Mid-Autumn Festival and the National Day was touted by Chief Executive John Lee as being full of joy and festivity. The centerpiece, the return of the National Day fireworks show, was watched by more than 430,000 people. That's nearly double the average past figures. On National Day, the 17 public museums in Hong Kong saw 63,000 visitors. The Space Museum broke its record single-day visitor number at 11,000. Moviegoers also smashed a decade-long attendance record for October 1st at 150,000 thanks to the half-price ticket offers.
I see that everyone, visitors and locals, firework display resumed after 5 years. It signifies that we have completely resumed normalcy after we have ridden out the storm.
The three night markets in Saiwan, Kwun Tong, and Wan Chai under the Hong Kong Night Vibes campaign also attracted a footfall reaching some 100,000 visitors, with turnovers reaching fivefold of regular bazaars. Declaring the Night Vibes campaign a success, the CE said the fair has achieved its goal. With that, the night markets will continue every weekend until the beginning of next year at the three locations. But new venues and elements will be considered for future bazaars as well. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Over 600,000 mainland tourists visited Hong Kong over the past few days, but that's still much lower than pre-pandemic figures. Although Tsim Sha Tsui was packed with people over the Golden Week, long queues that used to appear outside luxurious brands were no longer seen. But cosmetic stores or pharmacies attracted many tourists. Still, the visitor figures recorded over the past few days dropped 37% compared to the number of mainland tourists visiting during the same period in 2018. Chief Executive John Lee said every sector needs to join hands to think of ideas to attract more tourists to Hong Kong. The observatory says severe Typhoon Konu is moving towards southern Taiwan and will continue to intensify. It will issue the standby signal number 1 tomorrow night as Konu is set to enter within 800 kilometers of Hong Kong. The observatory noted it will be extremely hot over the coast of southern China. Temperatures may rise to 34 degrees in the next few days. According to the current forecast track, Konu will enter within 800 kilometers of the city as a super typhoon tomorrow afternoon. It's expected to be lowered to a severe typhoon after passing by Taiwan and further down as a typhoon when it enters within 400 kilometers of the city on Friday. Strong winds and squally showers are expected on Friday and over the weekend. The Council of the University of Hong Kong was originally scheduled to hold a special meeting today to handle a string of allegations involving HKU Vice-Chancellor Zhang Xiang. The meeting was then cancelled after Zhang requested a postponement. Zhang said in a statement that the allegations constitute serious defamation and issues had been taken out of context. Jackie Lin reports.
The University of Hong Kong is embroiled into an unraveling saga involving its president and vice-chancellor, Professor Zhang Xiang. Information from a whistleblower suggested several instances of misconduct on Zhang's part. They include a claim that Zhang bypassed protocols to replace the president's vehicle with another brand he favored without bidding. HKU gave a point-by-point response to some allegations against Zhang. On Zhang's alleged transfer of a scholarship donation from a mainland company to an account controlled by the principal's office, HKU said the money has been placed under the university's account to subsidize mainland students studying in the SAR. HKU added the process has fulfilled mainland and Hong Kong laws, and any allegations of money laundering would be serious defamation. Separately, Zhang was said to have hired a medical dean for HKU and vice principals through a U.S. headhunter. In defense, HKU said that's a usual practice and it has followed the established procedure to recruit top scholars with overseas experience. Responding to the allegations in a late-night statement, Zhang criticized the rumor mongers for leaking confidential correspondence and internal information of HKU, adding that the information was taken out of context to target HKU and himself. Zhang said such claims constitute serious defamation. He has consulted his lawyer for further action. He said the one-day notice for attending today's meeting with HKU's counsel was not enough and requested a postponement of 4 to 6 weeks. It's understood HKU's University Council was set to convene a special meeting over Zhang's allegations this afternoon, but the meeting has been called off. In a statement, HKU undergraduate representative Casey Chick said if the allegations against Zhang proved to be true, that would severely undermine the reputation and interests of HKU. With that, he supports the establishment of an investigation committee to look into the matter. The chief executive said he believes HKU could handle the situation fairly.
The management of affairs of the Hong Kong U is an internal matter for the Hong Kong U and the Vice Chancellor. What is important is any matter should be dealt with in a fair and impartial manner.
Zhang Xiang has been president of HKU since 2018 and is set to serve another 5-year term until 2028. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
In Thailand, a shooting spree at the popular Siam Paragon Mall in Bangkok has resulted in at least 3 deaths, according to local emergency services. Police arrested a 14-year-old on site who reportedly had a handgun and was injured. Injuries were also reported as hundreds of shoppers were seen fleeing the mall in the center of Bangkok after hearing what sounded like gunshots. The incident prompted authorities to shut access to a major transit stop nearby as the evening rush hour began. An intense rain pounded the city. First responders could be seen entering the mall as sirens wailed outside. Witnesses said crowds of people left the building while some found places to hide inside the mall. Republican Representative Matt Gaetz has filed a resolution to oust fellow Republican member Kevin McCarthy as U.S. House Speaker. The move comes after McCarthy angered the conservative factions of the GOP after relying on Democrat votes to pass a temporary funding extension on Saturday that headed off a federal government shutdown. Dan O'Rell tells us more.
After months of threatening to do so, conservative Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz called a motion to vacate and strip U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy of his office. Gaetz finally made the move after McCarthy relied on Democrat votes to pass a temporary funding extension on Saturday that headed off a partial government shutdown.
The yellow brick road of working with Democrats has been paved, constructed, engineered, and architected by Kevin McCarthy. Look no further than the debt limit deal, a deal he passed with Democrats. If he's able to stay in power, it will be him working for the Democrats, continuing to do their bidding. So this is a revealing exercise, and I think it'll show the country who's really in charge.
A motion to vacate is a rare and strong procedural tool that has only been used twice in the past century against Republican speakers. In January, McCarthy, hoping to appease someone with hard right like Gaetz as he fought to gain their vote for Speaker, agreed to give as few as 5 Republican members the ability to initiate a vote to remove him. When that didn't placate his critics, he agreed to reduce that threshold to 1, the system that historically has been the norm. That decision means McCarthy will now have to rely on Democrats to withhold their support for any effort to force his removal. The motion Gaetz introduced is a privileged resolution, a designation that gives it priority over other measures. The next step is for House leaders to schedule a vote on the resolution within 2 legislative days. However, there are several procedural motions that members of either the Republicans or Democrats could introduce to slow down or stop the process altogether. If the resolution came to the floor for a vote, it would take a simple majority of the House when no seats are vacant to remove McCarthy from his post. It is not clear whether Democrats will vote against McCarthy or extract concessions to keep him in power.
I'm proud of the record of what we've been able to accomplish so far. We've got a lot more to do, and I don't have to worry about the other things. Do your job, and good things will happen. I want to be conservative that shows how to govern.
Dan O'Rell, TV News.
A group of U.S. senators, including Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, plans to visit China next week and hopes to meet President Xi Jinping, according to a spokesperson for Republican Senator Mike Crapo. Schumer's office said last month that he was planning a trip to China, South Korea and Japan, co-led by Crapo. The Chinese embassy in Washington declined to comment, Reuters said. Some senators are eager to boost engagement with China and address business-related issues between China and the U.S. Communication between U.S. and Chinese officials has increased in recent months, bringing some improvement in ties strained for years over issues such as Taiwan. China and Brazil have recently made a first-ever trade transaction using the Chinese yuan, according to Bank of China Brazil. It said the bank successfully handled a Chinese yuan letter of credit discount business for a Brazilian pulp enterprise in late September. In handling the business, the bank immediately exchanged the Chinese yuan payment for some of Brazilian currency real, depositing the real receipt into the enterprise's account. It's the first time in history of China-Brazil trade that an entire closed-loop operation involved yuan pricing in exchange for real. The two countries hope for more similar transactions without referring to the US dollar as an intermediary currency. Still to come on tonight's news. Debate reopened over Fanling Golf Course after Hong Kong won gold in Asian Games. This year's Nobel Physics Prize is awarded to scientists for the study of electron dynamics. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is in court for overstating the value of his assets. A warm welcome back to TVB News. The government earlier revised parts of the Fanling Golf Course set for housing development as undetermined use. During the Town Planning Board's public hearing today, authorities said the amendment does not reflect the future permanent use of the site.
Last month, the government recalled some 32 hectares of land from the Fanling Golf Course, with 9.5 hectares of the site earmarked for building public residential housing. The Hong Kong Golf Club later filed a judicial review against an environmental impact assessment report that is in favour of building flats in the site. The High Court granted an interim injunction order that suspended the housing plan. Although the government has revised parts of land as undetermined use, authorities are still allowed to carry out research and assessment in the area. As for the public's views, the Town Planning Board has received 1,903 representations, and most of them are against the housing plans, with many opinions feeling the actions will permanently damage the golf course's historical and conservation values. About 30 representations support building homes there. During a public hearing today, the Hong Kong Golf Club praised the city's golf team for winning 2 historical medals in the Asian Games. The golfers will have less training facilities if the site is returned to the government.
我哋明明有一個世界級嘅國際高球場。
Hong Kong Golf Club captain Andy Kwok said it doesn't make sense if a world-class golf course is used as a park. He added it's absolutely unnecessary to recall the land, saying the decision would only cause a negative impact to the Hong Kong golf team.
繼續喺用地上高提供公營房屋呢。
The planning department said revising the site as undetermined use was made considering there are ongoing judicial reviews. The classification does not reflect the future permanent use of the land. Chief Executive John Lee stressed regardless of the board's decision in the end, it will assist the golf club in hosting international tournaments such as the Aramco Team Series set to be held on Friday.
Overseas, the Nobel Prize in Physics has been awarded to 3 scientists who look at electrons in atoms during the tiniest of split seconds. Pierre Agostini of Ohio State University in the U.S., Ferenc Krauss of the Max Planck Institute of Quantum Optics and Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich in Germany, and Anne Leer of Lund University in Sweden won the award. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, which announced the prize in Stockholm, said their experiments have given humanity new tools for exploring the world of electrons inside atoms and molecules. Leah is the 5th woman to receive a Nobel Prize in Physics. The Nobel Prizes carry a cash award of 11 million Swedish kroner, equivalent of $1 million US. According to Russian newspaper Kommersant, President Vladimir Putin may soon indicate he will take part in Russia's 2024 presidential election. Citing sources close to Russia's presidential administration, officials suspect Putin may announce he will take part in the election in March next year during a conference in November. Any potential presidential run would come amid the most serious set of challenges any Kremlin chief has faced since Mikhail Gorbachev grappled with the crumbling Soviet Union nearly 4 decades ago. Former U.S. President Donald Trump spent Monday in court for the start of a trial in a fraud lawsuit that could cost him control of Trump Tower and other prized properties. In a civil case brought against him by New York's Attorney General Letitia James, Trump is accused of inflating the value of his assets between 2011 and 2021. Nazvi Karim has more.
In April 2011, Donald Trump's net worth was estimated at $7 billion. But how much of it was a true reflection of his wealth and how much of it was inflated? A court in New York wants to find out. On Monday, Trump arrived at a Manhattan courthouse for a civil case against him, alleging he exaggerated the value of his wealth by between $1.9 billion and $3.6 billion from 2011 to 2021. This so he could show high collateral to banks and insurance companies. The case is being brought against him by New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is suing Trump, his adult sons Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, and the Trump Organization for $250 million. On day one of the trial, Trump was pictured sitting angry-faced in court, later dismissing the case as a scam aimed at disrupting his campaign for the 2024 presidential election.
It has been very successful for them because they took me off the campaign trail, because I've been sitting in a courthouse all day long instead of being in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or a lot of other places I could be at. This is a horrible situation for our country. It's never happened before. It's election interference. They're interfering with the presidential election of 2024.
Trump said Judge Arthur Engoron was fair in asking state lawyers if the allegations may be nullified by the statute of limitations, meaning too much time had passed for the case to be heard. Earlier, Engoron ruled that Trump committed fraud by exaggerating the size of his penthouse at Trump Tower. James, apart from seeking $250 million, also wants some of Trump's companies dissolved and a ban on him doing business in New York. Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, said Trump's assets were legitimately represented with their value rising because of his name. This is not fraud, this is real estate, she said. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
The recently retired General Mark Milley, who served as Joint Chiefs of Staff under former President Donald Trump, famously said the U.S. military doesn't take oath to a wannabe dictator. Trump subsequently unleashed a social media attack on Milley, suggesting America's former highest-ranking military officer might have been put to death for treason. General Mark Milley gave his response to NBC News.
Much of General Mark Milley's military career was spent in harm's way, especially if you include the reported and rumored battles at the White House.
Your legacy and Donald Trump's legacy are intertwined. Have you accepted that?
Well, I mean, that's a fact. Look, I'm not the president, never was the president. I'm merely an advisor to a president, to two presidents, actually. And our paths crossed, and I think that, history will obviously connect the two of us together, sure.
Yeah, some people would say you're downplaying the significance. I mean, you became a household name in many ways because of the reported clashes between you and the then president.
Yeah, the generals don't have clashes with presidents. I think some of that is overstated, frankly, about clashes, like raised voices and arguments and all that kind of stuff. I rendered to President Trump, just like I rendered to President Biden. I give him various courses of action and options.
But Milley was often described as a guardrail against the former president's impulses and made this apparent parting swipe at the former president during his retirement remarks.
We don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
A few days before the election, you were making it known that the Army, the military, would play no role in determining the outcome of the sure. election. Why did you feel the need to say that? Was that a specific concern that you had?
There was a lot of discussion in the open media about the U.S. military and what role we would play and so on. So I wanted to make sure it was clear to the American people, to our adversaries, to our friends and allies overseas, but also to our own force, to us wearing the uniform, that we have zero, and I mean zero, role in U.S. electoral politics.
And you assured the Chinese at one point, your Chinese counterpart, that essentially the U.S. was okay, the U.S. was stable. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, that's right. And Secretary Esser asked me to make a call, and we did that.
Last week, in a social media post, former President Trump attacked Milley for that call.
With regard to your talking to the Chinese, he said this is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death. A war between China and the U.S. could have been the result of this treasonous act. That's from a former commander-in-chief to a sitting chairman of the Joint Chiefs. How do you respond to that?
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I've served my country faithfully for 4.5 consecutive decades in peace and war. And my family has made enormous sacrifices for this country, and my mother and father before me, and grandparents before them. So I'll take a backseat to no one on loyalty to this country. And my loyalty is to the Constitution. It's to a document. It's never to an individual. And that's the loyalty of every single one of us in uniform.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.